Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter, and today we're going to be ranking all of the palettes that I tried in the month of May. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me, we're getting into it right now. First thing is first, if you're interested in this eye look, the video should be coming, and that is the First Impressions with Cradled in Ice by Fantasy Cosmetica. Gorgeous palette. So if you want to see this eye look, that video should be coming. Then next up, I wanted to talk about two face palettes here quick before I move into the eyeshadow palettes. My face palette for the month was the Juicy Cheeks palette by Blend Bunny, and I really wanted this palette for sort of the variety. Obviously, warm toned blush is not always my jam, but I like that this was really warm, really cool. And then I think I gravitated towards these three blushes kind of the most, but I did experiment a little bit with the yellows and orange, and I did really like the blush look that came with that. And I did try out the purples the one day. They definitely pull very pink on the face, which I understand because if it's too purple, it's going to look like a bruise or it's going to look like you're sick. So I understand why it does that, but it's just kind of frustrating because it's like when I pull this out, I don't want it to start looking like this when I blend it out, but it does. So overall, I liked it. I'm happy to have it in my collection. It's probably not going to be my all-time favorite blush palette because it is pretty bright, but I do still really like it. And then the Moonshroom highlighter palette. Oh, I like this one a lot. Obviously, the two shades that I'm the most into are probably these two, but I do like this one as a blush topper, and then this one doesn't really get a whole lot of love from me, but I do think it's very pretty, and I'm glad to have this in my collection as well. It's beautiful, even blended out just with fingers. Okay, so coming in dead last at number 13 is this Nomad Quad, and this was from their Disco Nights collection or whatever. And honestly, I don't think I used this the entire month because I went to go use it at one point and the shades were so dry, I just got a little bit frustrated and gave up on it. So here's some swatches so that you can see what the four shades look like. Sorry, those two kind of blended together, but you can see they're really, really, really softly pigmented. And for me, like, I want something that's like really bold, kind of intense in your face, right? And that is not this. So while I'm happy to have it for sort of my collector's mentality for my Nomad collection, it's definitely not a palette I'm going to be reaching for, so it came in dead last. Then coming in at number 12 is the Jade palette with Beautybay, and I know I did not need this palette. This palette is huge, right? And I tend to get kind of stuck with big palettes and then I just go to very like monochromatic looks, which is what I did every time I came into this palette. But for some reason, every time I looked at this palette and I saw this little quad right here, I was so intrigued by it that I just was like, I have to have it. I know I'm not going to use it. I have to have it. I don't know that I've learned my lesson, but I do think that the colors in here are nice, but it's definitely like an older formula for them, so the metallics are not quite as intense, and I found myself like reaching into this, but then wanting to go into other things more, so it came pretty low in the rankings for that reason. Then we have the Karaa Beauty. This is the Sweet Temptation, maybe? Nope, Starry Eyes, excuse me. And it looks like this. Now, I really liked the blush out of this. I went back to that a couple of times during the month, and I do really like kind of the pinky purple shades in here. I use these purple shades through here and the pinks through here, as well as the black in this particular palette. I don't think I reached into any of these kind of lighter pinks and grays or the yellowy browns, and I definitely didn't go into the pressed glitter because I like being able to see. But the shades that I did use, I do really like, and I like this sort of magazine style palette that they were putting out, so it came in at 11. Coming in at number 10 is Star Wars Mandalorian, and this one is nice. Like, it's a cute little light olivey palette. It's just not my absolute favorite color story. Like, if I'm honest with myself, neutrals are not my favorite thing. Greens I do like, but I tend to like if they get a little bit deeper than this, and I felt like the metallics that are in here are kind of one note. I do really like this one. It makes a great inner corner, but all over the lid it's just kind of predictable and boring to me, so it fell a little lower for that reason. I put in Klarity Aloha, and this palette I was so hype about when it first came out. I almost bought it like right off the release, and I'm glad that I didn't because I ended up not using it very much at all. I used the metallics a couple times in here, which I did really like, but I think the mattes in here don't blend with the metallics very well. So I find some of these metallics to be very striking, but I have to use other things to kind of make them work, which is a bit frustrating. So for me, while the packaging is really pretty and the metallics are really pretty, the color story just wasn't super workable, so it ended up falling a little bit lower in my list. Then I have this little Brights palette by Beautybay. I'm pretty sure this came as like a free gift or something when I did one of my orders, or it was on like super clearance and I picked it up for just a couple bucks, one of the two. But I do really like this one. I used some of these like orangey shades. The green I used in here, the blue, both blues, the white and the purple. I think I even hit the pink at one point, so I did get to use most, if not all, of the colors in this palette. And I do really like this. I think it's nice and bright, as the name would suggest. It's Beautybay formula. I love their formula because it's very pigmented, very powdery, easy to blend. So I was very happy with this one, even though it is an all matte palette. This one is very lucky that there's more metallics than there are mattes, because the mattes in here are very, very all right. I like the packaging. It's super cute. The color story in here, the metallics are where it's at. Those are definitely the shades that kind of save this palette. For me, the mattes in here are so softly pigmented that even as I try to use them for eye looks, I feel like I have to dig into the palette with my brush to get enough product to actually make it show up on my lids. So the matte formula needs some assistance. The metallics in here are awesome. The blushes are awesome. So for me, the metallics were the big save. I found myself going into other palettes to get mattes to make an eye look, and then using this palette as my sort of source of metallics. All right, then coming in at number 6 is the Machina palette from Blend Bunny. And this one, I don't know. I liked the color story. I think the metallics were not quite as special as I was expecting them to be, so that was a bit of a disappointment. And the mattes in here I do think are very pretty. The blues, the blacks, these kind of swampy greens, and the purples. These reds I wasn't as like into, and the purple pink kind of shades I do think are pretty, but somewhat redundant to some of the other palettes that they have, so those didn't quite cut it for me. So overall I think like that half of the palette was really interesting for the most part, but again the metallics kind of fell short, so this one fell lower than what Blend Bunny normally falls in my rankings. Then we have the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume 5, and I originally carried this one over from the month prior in April because I wasn't sure I was done playing with it, and I did dabble with it a little bit more throughout the month of May. I do think it's a very beautiful palette, and I love the metallic like duochrome multichrome shades that are in here. Like the center row in here is really nice. I love this kind of aqua teal glittery shade here. The silver in here is very pretty. The greens in here are very pretty. Obviously, there's a lot of like warm toned red kind of purpley shades that I don't get as much use out of, so those are kind of a minus for me, but in general, I do still think this is a really pretty palette. I picked it up on a discount. I think I paid about $80 shipped for this palette, so I think that would be a more comfortable price point than going all the way to the $125 plus shipping that it should have otherwise cost. All right, then coming in at number 4 is the Glamlite Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake palette. And this one I think is very pretty too. I am like in love with Glamlite palettes. They consistently rank like number 1, number 2 in my rankings. But this palette, I don't know, like I liked it, and every time I used it, I liked the looks that I made. But there were things that I just liked so much more this month than this palette, so this one kind of slipped down. I think just because it got like outshined by the competition. Like I said, the shades in here that I used, I really liked, but I just didn't find myself dipping into this one as much, but still the quality is phenomenal. It's Glamlite quality, as you would know and love. So it came up fairly high for that reason, because it's higher quality in my opinion than some of these other palettes, but it couldn't go any higher because there was just stuff I loved so much more this month. Coming in at number 3, this is the Fantasy Cosmetica Fighter palette, which looks like this. And this is the inside color story. Now I was super hooked on like this 5 pan right here. These 4 shades I could care too figs about, but everything else in here I thought was really pretty. I made some beautiful kind of like smoky blue-gray eye looks with this palette, and I went back and recreated that look multiple times this month just because I thought it was so pretty. And I almost never go back and recreate looks that I've already created because I feel like once I've done it, I've done it. And half the time I don't remember exactly what I did, so it's hard to recreate. But for this one, I did go back and recreate those looks, and that told me that it needed to come pretty high up in the ranking because it was such a favorite this month. Coming in at number 2, and this was a surprise, but this is the Salem and the Witch palette from Salem Cosmetics, New Orleans. And originally I was like, I think this palette is going to rank pretty low because I'm struggling to use it in a way that I find that I enjoy it. But then I did this all matte eye look with the purples, this dark navy blue, this pink, and I think I used a little bit of this pink, and it was probably one of my favorite eye looks I've done recently. I did throw a little bit of this shade in the inner corner. That was the only like metallic that I had in the look. Otherwise it was a pure matte look, and I was like catching myself in mirrors, like staring at myself all day that day. So for me, I think this one came up a lot higher because of that one look that I made. Otherwise it probably would have ranked more towards the middle. And then by far, my favorite palette from this month was the Secret Garden palette from Bella Beaute Bar. Now, if you guys, did I even post my video for this one? I filmed a video. I don't know if I've posted it yet. But I don't like the text on this palette. Like, the font is fine, but the sort of green metallic, it is sort of disruptive with the green background. So I think it's just a little bit too clunky. Like, had they made it almost like a black text, I think that would have been nicer, just to kind of keep it a little bit easier to read. But that's just a very small complaint. The actual palette itself, gorgeous. The metallic duochrome multichrome shades in here, stunning. There's some holochrome shades in here. I believe this one is a holochrome. That one I want to say is a holochrome as well. These are multi-chromes. I mean, there's a lot of really beautiful, beautiful shades in this palette. I think the mattes in here blend really nicely. And I like that you have like a small row of neutrals in case that's how you want to kind of build out your look. But you can by far skip over that entirely to go just with greens and pinks. So for me, this one came all the way up to number 1 this month. And with that said, that is everything for this video. Let me know what were the palettes that you really liked playing with through the month of May. I would definitely be curious to hear about that. I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!